Have you been waiting a while for what you want to manifest? Do you feel like a certain something needs to happen before you can finally relax or heal or feel like you made it? Do you often wait for someone else to approve or confirm or agree with you in order to feel validated or confident about yourself? Have you caught yourself feeling or thinking, when this manifests, then I'll be successful and feel secure? Most people who follow common manifestation teachings, consciously or unconsciously, live in a constant state of what I call not yet, because that's the foundation of the whole framework of conventional manifestation. You don't have the thing, so you must magnetize or attract what you want because you don't have it yet. Then you do, the manifestation practices, the techniques, and then you essentially wait. I followed the mainstream manifestation teachings for years, and what I've come to understand and why I stopped trying to quote unquote manifest is that they actually reinforce powerlessness. And manifestation is not how reality actually works. We don't manifest because what we want already exists. We don't attract anything. We aligned through resonance with already existing timelines according to our level of coherence. Now, if you don't know what coherence is, the previous episode is all about coherence, so you should listen to that if you've got questions about what coherence is. But when you understand the science of the true nature of reality and you truly identify as your highest self, then you also understand that most manifestation teachings are very disempowering as well, because they actually reinforce lack because they are rooted in the concept of lack. And that's one of the main reasons that people struggle to manifest. Like they're stuck in a waiting game of conditioned and normalized powerlessness and not having. And so that's what this episode is about. Why waiting for external validation is reinforcing powerlessness and prevents you from actually living the reality that you want. Welcome to The Simple Source, a paradigm-shifting space where self-love, healing, spirituality, and personal growth are redefined. If you've been told healing takes years, that abundance must be attracted, or that transformation requires struggle, you haven't been told the truth. I'm Linda Valines, a certified trauma-informed holistic coach, author, and spiritual guide. After healing myself from chronic conditions, complex trauma, and lack, not by following traditional frameworks, but by creating my own, I'm now teaching you to love, heal, and free yourself, mind, body, and soul, so you can reclaim your highest health, happiness, and potential with joy and ease. Each week, we go beyond surface-level self-help and into the real mechanics of transformation. If the traditional paths to healing and spirituality haven't produced the changes you want in the life you desire, you're in the right place. You were never meant to struggle or wait for what is already yours. Let's get started with today's episode. From the time that we're children through adulthood, we're conditioned to look outside of ourselves for external validation, that we're okay, that we're enough, that we belong, that we are seen, that we are loved. Our parents, our teachers, culture, society, they all hand us that same script, right? Don't trust yourself until someone else agrees with you. And don't celebrate yourself until someone hands you an A+ on your work. Now, that conditioning doesn't just become the backbone of your subconscious programming that does govern 95% of your human reality, but it reveals itself in your relationship with yourself and with your reality. It shows up in the way people buy into manifestation, right? Their perceptions of what success is, of what love is, what health requires. Every single aspect of life is subject to this. We are taught to wait. We're taught to wait for proof, for permission, for some sort of external sign that we're good, that everything we're doing is quote unquote working. But what we're actually doing is we're reinforcing powerlessness. So what we're going to talk about today is why waiting itself is one of the biggest reasons that you're stuck and you're not experiencing the reality and the life that you want. Because waiting is not neutral. It has its own resonance. Like everything in life, it has an energetic signature. And that energetic signature carries information that then communicates with the quantum field that is the foundation of all reality. Because waiting is essentially choosing the timeline of not yet and not having. Because when you wait, you reinforce that learned powerlessness that says my certainty, my peace, my joy, my health, my success, my empowerment, my satisfaction depends on something outside of me. And that is not your truth. That's a normalized distortion of who and what you truly are. So waiting is the hidden reason that so many people feel so frustrated, so disappointed when they try to quote unquote manifest. It's not that what you want does not exist, or that you cannot have it, or that you are not worthy yet, or that you're blocked, or that the universe is withholding it from you until you pass a test. It's simply that waiting collapses you into a timeline of lack. And when you resonate with lack, you're not in resonance with abundance or already having. So throughout this episode, we're going to counter that conditioning with quantum physics, yay, one of my favorite topics, and science so that you can unsubscribe from the waiting game and from that manifestation illusion and start to understand with clarity and with certainty that you don't have to wait for what literally already exists and is available to you right now. You're going to understand that it's perception, that it's resonance and coherence, not waiting for divine timing and waiting to prove your worth, that determine what timeline and reality you live in. Now, I recently experienced a deeply layered and severe traumatic event where all my repressed childhood sexual abuse and suppressed childhood fears spontaneously surfaced at the same time in relationship. It was the most intense experience I've ever had, like really dark, very disturbing, and terrifying when all of that surfaced simultaneously. But 6 weeks later, I have essentially recovered from the trauma, meaning post-rupture. That's what I call the trauma. So the week after the rupture, if my post-traumatic stress symptoms of hypervigilance, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, etc., was at a 10, because I literally had to sleep with the lights on, I was like still traumatized. That's how terrifying it all was. Now, 6 weeks later, the post-traumatic stress symptoms are at a 1, meaning there's no anxiety, no intrusive thoughts, no flashbacks. The only minor, very subtle symptom remaining that continues to fade and become a non-issue is very subtle hypervigilance on occasion that when it does surface, it's quickly resolvable. So that is a very fast and productive trauma recovery. Now, I'm not saying that I healed all the repressed childhood sexual abuse and suppressed fears that surface, but the traumatic event that happened 6 weeks ago is no longer traumatic to me. It has been integrated and largely resolved, which means the healing of the deeper layers can now happen with ease and productivity and clarity. Now, one of the reasons that I've healed from the rupture so quickly is because I held and continue to hold the perspective that I have already healed, meaning I was confident the trauma was over, the symptoms were temporary, and my healing had already happened. So for instance, when a post-traumatic stress symptom would surface, an intrusive thought, anxiety, I would literally say to myself, my brain and my body have already healed. Because I know that in another temporal dimension of my reality, they have. Now, I don't perceive time as linear anymore because it's not. I did a whole episode about how to stop feeling burdened by time called Why You're Not Behind that you should listen to if you haven't yet. And I get into why I'm not bound by linear time anymore, but I fully understand that the past, the present, and the future are simultaneous. And that's not spiritual woo-woo, that's like real science, okay? So again, listen to the episode for details about that. We'll touch on it later, but to be clear, when I reminded myself that I've already healed, that did not mean that I was bypassing my healing. So I've been prioritizing healing in the past 6 weeks through emotional release, somatic exercises, subconscious theta reprogramming meditations, shadow work, ancestral clearing, etc. When I claimed that I had already healed, that was not my healing work, essentially. But what it did was anchor me in the moment into my highest truth, which is that my brain and my body want to heal. They know how to heal. And when I provide them the proper environment to heal, the right conditions to heal, that's exactly what they do. And that is the perspective that I live from. And so living from that truth actually allowed powerful healing breakthroughs to surface, meaning I've already healed. My brain and my body have already healed. It really did create like an opening for really amazing insights to surface, like why the rupture happened, specific benefits on a spiritual level, etc. So I never felt powerless, is what I'm saying, in relation to the trauma. I was never like, when am I going to heal? This hypervigilance is awful. Not to say that it wasn't very uncomfortable, particularly immediately post-rupture. It's just I never felt a sense of helplessness or identification with the trauma. I always chose to be empowered in the fact that I am a multidimensional being. I am already my highest self. And that means on another dimensional layer, I have already healed. And yes, holding that perspective absolutely accelerated my healing in various ways because it fundamentally allowed me to relax. And we can only heal when we are in a relaxed parasympathetic state. That's just neuroscience and biology. So now let's go back and talk about the root of why so many people feel powerless, stuck, and they spend so much time endlessly waiting for their life to finally happen to them. Why powerlessness is so normalized and why people wait for external validation to feel secure. So again, from the very beginning, as children, we learn that our worth, our value, our lovability, our sense of enoughness, and safety come from someone else's approval through the quality of attunement with our parents or our caregivers. That's the relational dynamic that we're all subject to. Now, unfortunately, most of us were raised without healthy attunement and were relationally mirrored by parents and caregivers who did not love themselves unconditionally and who did feel insecure about themselves, meaning you saw yourself through the wounds of someone else's unhealed perspective of themselves. And so the result of that is normalized codependency and family systems where your sense of worth, your sense of wholeness was not taught as self-sourced or source itself, meaning highest self, divinity, but rather taught as dependent on someone or something else, like your parents praising you, if you were given love unconditionally or conditionally, meaning most family dynamics operate through conditional love. And many people are criticized or punished or ignored for being their authentic selves. And for most people, we were raised in family systems where unhealthy forms of external validation equaled love and safety and belonging. And then that need for external validation is just reinforced in school systems, perfectionistic school systems, where, you get a gold star when the teacher says you did something to their standard. And then as a teenager, popularity, all of those social circles are very ostracizing so that you only get a sense of feeling acceptable or good enough when you're validated by your peers. And then as an adult, in the professional environment, we're taught to hustle and compromise our authentic selves to be successful, to be seen. And then little by little, you internalize and reinforce disempowering beliefs, which is that you can't trust your own knowing until someone else confirms it, and that you are not enough and valid in your wholeness as you are right now until it is acknowledged externally. And that conditioning runs really deep because, again, it is reinforced everywhere in culture and society, ancestrally, and it seeps into the way that we work, into the way that we study, educate, the way that we love, the way that we relate, the way that we perceive the world. Even as adults, many people do not make decisions until they've checked it with like 3 different friends, read 20 reviews or gotten some sort of a yes from an authority figure. And so for many people, without even realizing it, their inner compass has been outsourced to external validation. So instead of self-confidence, there's just rampant self-doubt. And that is not natural. It's learned. A baby doesn't doubt if they're worthy of being met when they cry because they're hungry. A child does not naturally doubt their joy until someone tells them that their joy is too much. Self-doubt is installed through conditioning. And that conditioning didn't just get reinforced in childhood and culture, but it got repackaged, it got resold through mainstream manifestation teachings. Because think about the popular language, right? Surrender, trust divine timing. You have to attract what you desire, magnetize your dream life. Now, on the surface, those phrases may sound exciting, maybe even alluring, but underneath, they actually carry the same disempowering script that you were fed as a child, that you're not enough, that you are not whole as you are, that there is something incomplete about you and your life. And so you got to wait until something outside of you completes you. So do you see how disempowering that is? Instead of liberating you, those frameworks reinforce the exact pattern of external validation that keeps people powerless. Those manifestation teachings tell you, just in slightly more spiritual language, basically to sit tight until some cosmic authority higher than you decides that you're ready once you have proven your worth. But reality doesn't work that way. Again, waiting is not neutral. It has energetic resonance. And this is where the science comes in. So in quantum physics, the state that you hold determines the outcome that collapses your reality. So if you're resonating with, I do not have it yet, then the timeline that you are consciously choosing, unconsciously choosing, through your state of being, through the perception of I don't have it yet, is one of lack. And so what you're doing in that state of waiting for external validation, waiting for proof, is you're basically like hitting the delay button on your own life. You're just saying like, my highest timeline is going to happen later. I will feel secure when it arrives. I'm going to embody my highest self once I see proof of my success. Every time you do that, that waiting energy just continues to collapse you into the reality of not yet, not enough, not having. And that's why manifestation doesn't work for so many people in terms of like the big stuff, the things that people really want. And it's not that you're broken. It's not that the universe is withholding, testing you, or that you are like fundamentally blocked from what you want. It's simply that you have been taught to wait for proof to feel secure and certain that you already have everything that you want, that you already are everything that you want to be. And that reinforced waiting is actually just a reinforcement of lack. So when you resonate with lack, you experience lack in your reality because you're resonating with powerlessness. Your reality is not going to reflect your power. Your power does not come from an external source or external proof. Your power to shape your reality is fundamentally about your own level of coherence, meaning, are you identified and embodied and behaving and present as your highest self right now? All of that is fully in your command and in your control right now and at all times. Nothing external determines that except for you. So you can choose to embody the certainty of already having before evidence shows up. And that is not delusion. That's actually your highest truth. So when you align with your highest truth, mind, body, and soul, that's coherence. And again, I did a whole episode about the 7 layers of coherence and what true coherence is. So please go listen to that if you haven't yet, because it's going to make a whole lot of sense in terms of what I'm saying now. But your coherence is what determines your reality, because it's your resonance that shifts your timelines. And that's how your reality changes. And so waiting is just old conditioning playing dress up in spiritual manifestation language. It's the same normalization of powerlessness that so many people operate from day in and day out. But the moment that you stop waiting and you essentially stop hitting that delay button, and you start realizing that you don't need to wait for what is already real and done and yours, you can then begin to reclaim your sovereignty and your authority to start living your highest timeline right now. And that's when creation becomes really fun, because you're no longer trying to prove yourself to a universe that never doubted you in the first place. So now that we've discussed some basics about the root of powerlessness, let's get into the science of why waiting resonates you with lack and not having, when what you want actually already exists. So this science is what mainstream manifestation ignores, and why so many people struggle to manifest, because they're using methods that literally oppose the true nature of reality, meaning you're being taught to create reality against how reality naturally works. So let's go over what real science tells us about possibility and the true nature of reality. So there was a really fascinating experiment done earlier this year where international scientists that were curious about quantum non-locality. So quantum non-locality means that entangled particles influence each other instantly across distances, proving basically that separation in space is an illusion. And so these scientists produced photons, and photon is the fundamental particle of light. They produced photons that were observed to exist across 37 dimensions simultaneously. So I want you to just think about that, okay? Now, those photons were not passing through dimensions one at a time. They were not traveling through different dimensions. They were already in all 37 dimensions at once. Now, in fact, every core quantum experiment confirms that particles don't actually exist in one reality until observed. They exist in all possible realities at once. And in quantum physics, that's called superposition. And superposition is very important to understand for what we are talking about today, because it means that the universe and reality itself does not operate on a not yet, then later model. It operates on simultaneity, multiple outcomes coexisting at the same time. So just like quantum particles can occupy many dimensions at once, our consciousness naturally exists across multiple dimensions and also then multiple temporal layers or timelines. And so the timelines that you are consciously experiencing and attuned to are just the ones that you're resonant with, the ones that you have collapsed into through your resonance, your observation, and your coherence. So in your own life, this means that your reality, where you have everything that you want, already exists. Like, it's not a fantasy that you are waiting to build brick by brick, manifestation technique by manifestation technique. It already exists. It's coexisting with the timeline that you're living in right now. The love that you want, the abundance that you are seeking, the freedom that you crave from the unsatisfactory situations in your life, that timeline already exists. So what you want is not over there in some future. Just like the photon, that timeline, that reality already exists, like in another state, dimension, or timeline, okay? That means waiting is unnecessary energy, because the state that you want to live in, the reality that you want to live in, is already present and real. It's just a matter of whether or not you have collapsed yourself into that timeline. You do not actually have to create it brick by brick or manifest it. Now, here's where a lot of people also get stuck. They assume that reality is linear because people think that time is linear, right? You think, I don't have it yet, but one day I will. Now, that assumption is actually a collapse into lack, right? Because it ties you again into that not yet and not having timeline. When the truth is, time and causality are nonlinear. Now, in the quantum world, causality does not follow neat sequential paths, like past, present, and future exist, again, simultaneously. And that fact is demonstrated across multiple layers of quantum physics. Linear time is just a 3D construct, but you are a multidimensional being. You also, like the photon, because you know what? You're made of photons, friend. You exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions. So now let's talk about how we collapse into a timeline. I keep saying that. So how does reality then select one possibility over all the other possibilities? So this is what's called wave function collapse. So in physics, when particles exist in superposition, right, when they're in all possible states at once, the moment that they're observed, that superposition then collapses into one outcome. That's wave function collapse. That's what it's called. Now, the key is that that collapse is not random. That collapse is based on the conditions of the experiment, how it's set up, what's being measured, and most importantly, where the attention or the consciousness directs it. So translating this into your experience, your inner state, your beliefs, your emotions, your focus, that's like the equivalent of your experimental setup. It's the condition that determines what outcome collapses into your reality. Then think about what happens when you wait, right? Your inner setup is like, I don't have it yet, or I know it's working when I see the proof. And that is literally the condition of lack. And that is what collapses all possibilities and timelines into the reality where you still don't have it yet, the outcome of not having. Now, if your inner state is coherent, operating in certainty and embodiment as your highest self, then your setup then becomes what I want already exists. And I can choose to exist as my version of self who's already existing in the version of reality where I already have what I want. And so the more that you embody your power to do that, because you have the power to do that, the more that your reality shifts into timelines where you do already have what you want. So that's why waiting reinforces your powerlessness. Waiting, again, isn't passive. It does, like that energy, that condition collapses you into lack because your consciousness, your perspective is focused on not having. And so now you might be wondering, well, how can that timeline where I have what I want already be here if I can't see it? Okay, your logical, egoic mind may be asking that. Now, this is where entanglement reveals something really cool. So there's no distance between you and the version of yourself who's already living it. Because in physics, entanglement means when particles are entangled, changes in one instantly correlate with changes in another, regardless of distance. So there's no signal traveling back and forth. There's no separation. There's no time. There's no distance. It's just instant connection, no matter how quote unquote far those particles are. And that could be across the universe. So that means that the timeline where you already have what you want is not far away in linear time or even space. It's actually already entangled with the one that you exist in because you are entangled with yourself. How could you not be? Your particles are your particles. Your particles are your particles in every timeline. So waiting assumes distance. It assumes separation. It assumes like that version of me is far away. I will get there later. But entanglement promises immediacy. Like the gap really is just an illusion. All that's required for you to shift to enact that inherent entanglement where you then just shift into the higher version of yourself and timeline is resonance and coherence. And I really want to define resonance so that you stop confusing it with the attraction-based model of manifestation, which is incorrect. Resonance happens when a system is driven by an external force at its natural frequency, causing its amplitude to increase, okay? Resonance does not mean that one object magnetizes the other object because they match in frequencies. Resonance is not magnetism. It's not attraction. It's not inertia. It's just amplification of vibration due to frequency alignment. That means if you put two identical tuning forks next to each other, they don't move closer to each other in space. They're not magnetized to each other. One fork must vibrate first by being struck or something so that its sound waves then excite the other fork. So then the second fork then resonates because of the vibrations in the air, not because of a direct force of attraction. But still, in that resonance, those like two tuning forks, they don't move closer to each other in space. They simply resonate in harmony with each other. Their fields are synchronized. Now, in physics, magnetism is the force by which objects or particles are attracted or repelled, okay, due to the alignment of their magnetic fields. That's magnetism. Now, attraction occurs between opposite magnetic poles, and like poles repel each other. So no, like does not attract like. I want to make that clear. Magnetism is not resonance, and you do not shift timelines and realities through magnetism and attraction. You shift through resonance, superposition, and entanglement. And that's like what's underneath quantum leaps. From the outside, it looks like someone's life like totally shifted overnight. But what's really happening is like very simply is that they just aligned with a higher timeline so coherently and so cleanly that it looked like they made a quantum leap. But again, time and distance are not determining factors in your reality. There is no such thing as later. There is only now. And people who quantum leap live by that. And you may be hung up on this because you're hung up on linear time. And waiting locks you into that illusion of linear time. It keeps you in that story of, I'll get there eventually, like later, someday. So as long as you buy into that story, you're actually ignoring the truth of reality, which is simultaneity, which is that all of your timelines exist right now, and you can shift instantaneously. So at the beginning of the year, I've talked about this throughout this podcast, but at the beginning of this year, I shifted timelines 25 times in 3 months alone. Timeline shifts that resulted in immediate and verifiable changes in my physical reality. Like I didn't just like wake up and I felt like, I felt like different. No, like my physical reality like changed immediately, instantaneously because of emotional release or a deeper identification with my highest self or more reclamation of my sovereignty. And those timeline shifts, again, were instantaneous. I mean, instantaneous. So that's when I was like, personally experienced time and cause and effect are non-linear. And, you really should listen to the episode that I did called Why You're Not Behind so that you can learn more about those timeline shifts and how time is truly non-linear. But we shift timelines all the time instantaneously because we resonate differently throughout the day. Unless you're like very coherent, then your resonance is like pretty fucking stable and you are locked into your highest timeline. But throughout the day, for most people, emotional states, fluctuate, sometimes greatly. And due to certain circumstances, health, whatever is happening, relationship, your resonance and level of coherence may change. And so most of the time, those shifts are so imperceptible. You don't notice them at all. But the noticeable timeline shifts or noticeable reality changes, they don't require time. They are instantaneous. And that's because, again, all possible timelines already exist. You don't need to manifest anything. You don't need to create a timeline. It already exists. You already have everything right now. So in quantum mechanics, energy levels and dimensional states are not created. They exist as potentials already. Particles don't build states. They actually jump into them. That's what's been observed. That's where probably the term jumping timelines comes from. But you don't actually jump into a new timeline. You shift into it by resonance. But just think of that in terms of your own life. Your desired reality isn't something that you have to construct over time. It already exists as one of those potential states. And so you don't have to earn it. You don't have to deserve it. And you certainly don't have to wait for it. You just have to shift into a higher resonating timeline by shifting your own resonance into a higher state of coherence. So when you operate in that state of waiting, right, assuming that your dream life has to be built brick by brick and that you'll eventually reach it if you're patient enough or you're hardworking enough or you're trusting of the universe enough, that just keeps you resonating with lack, but physics shows us that's not how reality operates. It's not a construction project. It's just a literal quantum jump into a pre-existing possibility. And none of what I'm saying now is like metaphor. This is all real physics. Superposition has been experimentally confirmed again and again, from the double slit experiment to, again, this 37-dimensional photon experiment. Wave function collapse is like a foundational principle in quantum mechanics. Entanglement has been repeatedly validated, including like winning the Nobel Prize in 2022. And nonlinear time and non-locality, those are active principles in quantum physics. And quantum jumps have been like directly observed in atomic systems. So what I'm laying out in this episode is like literally verified behaviors of the fundamental building blocks of reality. So when I say waiting is conditioned powerlessness, that isn't philosophy. It's actually a conclusion grounded in both physics and our highest spiritual truths. The reality you live is not handed to you from the universe once you have waited for it by trusting divine timing because you've proved that you're ready and worthy. Your reality is determined by your resonance and your coherence. You're not a bystander in your life because you are in control of your resonance and your coherence. And again, the truth is all possibilities already exist right now. Your dream life is not in progress. It is not on the way when you have proven your worth and your readiness. It is actually already encoded as a potential state that is already entangled with you. That means it's available right now. The more that you wait for your dream life, you wait for that quote unquote manifestation, you wait for proof or evidence, essentially, you keep collapsing yourself into timelines of lack because you keep reinforcing the story of not yet and not having. You're not challenging that conditioning or the script that was handed to you, since birth, where you've outsourced your power to external validation. But you can start taking command of your resonance and your coherence and your perspective and your sovereignty right now. Because the question isn't when is all this going to arrive that I want? The real question is, which timeline have I collapsed myself into with my current state of being right now? And what version of myself am I identifying with? Because the moment you stop waiting and you start embodying the fact that everything that you want is already done and available to you right now, and you start identifying as your highest self, then you are empowered. You have sourced your power back into yourself. So many people are stuck in life, not because the universe is testing them, because they're blocked, or the universe withholds, or they're not asking for something in the right way. It's just because most people feel powerless in their life, and they hold deep subconscious beliefs and patterning about being powerless. And most people believe in conditionality. I must do this in order to have that. And so many people operate in life from that powerlessness, that mindset of powerlessness. Someone or something has the key to my happiness, my healing, my health, my success, etc. But your power is not in hoping or attracting or magnetizing. Your power is actually in your coherence and embodying the certainty of already having, because you do already have everything that you want. And the moment that you stop outsourcing your validation, your evidence, your proof, is the moment that you stop collapsing into that not yet and not having reality. That's your sovereignty. That's your freedom to choose your reality as you want right now. You don't need your external reality to change to know with certainty that you already have what you want. That's like the wounded lower self that only identifies as human in 3D constructs. But that's just one small part of your true identity. So you can continue to reinforce the belief that I'll believe it when I see it. And you can continue to play the waiting game that have so many people unhappy and stuck in their lives. Or you can adopt the perspective of your highest self, that You will see it when you believe it because you already have it, because you do. The version of you who is already healed, already in love, already thriving exists. And that version of you is already entangled with the you right now because it is you, just on another temporal dimension. But you are a multi-dimensional being. You are limitless. You are only confined by the restrictions that you give yourself. And I hope that some of the science that I've shared with you today helps you understand that there is no time or distance between those versions of yourself, just differences in coherence and resonance. And so you can keep waiting for proof, or you can foster coherence and live as the proof. So here's your action step for the week. I want you to pick one area of your life where you have been waiting, whether that's your career or money or love or health or some other form of quote unquote success. And I want you to just assume that it's already done. Ask yourself, how would you feel? What emotions would define your everyday then? And then ask yourself, what is stopping you from feeling those emotions right now? And then ask yourself, what identity does that version of you who already has what you want uphold that is different from the identity that you are enforcing right now by waiting and not yet and not having? That's a powerful question. So the answers to those questions are going to reveal how you are resonating right now, what your level of coherence is right now, and how you would resonate in the timeline where you do have what you want. Because the only thing in the way of feeling fulfilled is your perspective of your reality. Because the only proof you need is yourself. Because your reality is just a reflection of you. And the more that you understand that, the more that you embody that, and the more that you trust that, you reclaim more and more of your power to live in the reality that you want right now and not later. Because nothing needs to change in order for you to remember that you are free, that you are sovereign, and that you are in command of your own state of well-being. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope this episode awakened you, inspired you, and reminded you of what's possible when you love, heal, and free yourself and reclaim your highest truth and power. If this show has transformed or enlightened your self-love, growth, and healing journey, please like, save, and share this episode and leave a positive review on Apple or Spotify. And subscribe to be reminded of new episodes. Your support is deeply appreciated and truly helps this show so much. And if today's episode resonated with you, don't stop here. Go deeper. My book, Unconditional, You Are Perfect As You Are, expands on these teachings and gives you the missing framework about self-love that no one is talking about. So get your copy today to start reading and loving yourself more. And if you're ready for the ultimate healing journey with daily instruction and guidance from me, I'd love to see you inside the Source membership, the only holistic and comprehensive step-by-step self-healing program that is proven to work. Remember, you were never meant to struggle or wait for what is already yours. It's time to claim everything you want and more. All the links are in the show notes. I'll see you next time.